Hello, everyone. This is Rick with the Cyber Pro podcast. I'm excited today. We are going to talk to Roy. Roy, let's kick it right off. Let's get it right over to you.
Mm.
Who are you and why are you awesome?
Oh wow, why I'm awesome. So first of all, let's know who I am. So I'm Roy Eliyahu, co-founder and CEO of Assault Security. In short, I'm a security practitioner. I spent a number of years in the elite security units of the IDF, building cybersecurity products to defend against multiple attack vectors. And really saw the API security gap and decided to start Salt. And I think API security is super cool. So maybe that's why we are at Salt awesome. I want to say myself.
I love it. I love that you're bringing in your team, which is really cool. But tell us a little bit about Salt Security.
Yeah, so Salt basically founded in late 2018. This is where we did our initial sit down. And basically, already in 2015, 2016, I saw the emerging attack vector of APIs as we saw the movement from monolith application to distributed application through Kubernetes and so on. And now with Gen AI that build APIs in literally in minutes. We saw there is new needs for APIs and how to defend them. And in short, it's how you discover all your APIs and all your rogue APIs. How do you govern these APIs? How do you make sure they're built with security in mind and they're not just out there exposing sensitive data that should not be exposed, as an example? And lastly, how do you protect them against attacks that are simply go under the radar of traditional tools? Um, so we built a solution in Salt Lake to address all these three pillars. Quick to discover all your APIs, help you govern with out-of-the-box policies on your APIs and making sure what you have is actually built securely. And lastly, how you protect against these malicious attacks. So I always use this analogy of, think about a company as a building. All the doors and windows are APIs. Is the way to go in and out throughout your building. Now, with today's world, you don't have just one building. You have a neighborhood of tons of buildings, and they are changing and building, and and your environment is dynamically changing. So the first part is let's map all your doors and windows. That's the discovery. Second, let's make sure they are properly locked and there is not a window open. Anybody can come in the middle of the night and grab whatever they want. So that's kind of the second part. And the third part is let's detect if somebody tried to open doors to check what's happening. Somebody come with a hammer to one of the windows. So we want to keep them away from the neighborhood to make sure it's safe. So that's kind of what we do in a very high level.
Roy, I know in the past questions you've answered with some really great insights about how Salt delivers great API security. But let's take it back one step. Define the acronym API and what do they actually do?
Yeah. So I'll take a step backward. So API, it's application programming interface. It's essentially the way any type of client-side applications communicating with the back end or exchanging data with the company. So simple example, think about all your mobile apps. When you order an Uber or a Lyft, when you order food through Doordash, or you put on your bank account and you want to move money, all these actions, all the data you see in front of your eyes is exchanged through APIs, essentially like the glue that connecting all these systems. Now, this is what we see as a user, right? All these web apps, same concept for the browser. Behind the scenes, companies also talk to each other through APIs. The fact that I log into an app and I'm getting my two-factor authentication code, right? This 6 digits we get over text might be coming from Twilio. So this company integrates on the backend through Twilio APIs. And if you use Stripe to pay, so it might integrate with Stripe. So there's there is essentially like a good ways to quantify it, if you take the homepage of Best Buy and you ask yourself, how many APIs are running in the background just to show you this one page? I'm curious, what would be your guess, Rick?
It's probably over a dozen, but I'm probably way low on that.
Yeah, it's actually over 300 APIs, different API calls.
Jesus.
Your name, your recommendation, your last messages, what's coming, the order, like all these things you see on the screen. It's like tons of API that, like every API is a pixel in a picture, and kind of they're building the full picture by calling these services and kind of summarizing the bigger picture. And this is one page. So every company today has thousands to tens of thousands of APIs that are changing daily and weekly. So it's hard to visualize it, this API fabric, but it's out there and it's actually exchanging most of the data of organization and their IP as well.
Roy, talk to me a little bit about why you believe APIs have become such a big part of our world.
Mhm. So let's look in a broader perspective, right? Our world is becoming more and more technology oriented. Everything we do becoming digital. Every business that was not digital becoming a digital business, right? That's the future of the world. The way we speak, the way we communicate, the way we do everything becoming more and more online. All of these digital services are powered by APIs. Over 83% of the internet traffic is API traffic, just to give you the magnitude of what portion of the entire internet is actually API. So the majority are API based. And it's almost crazy to me to think that this foundational layer that carry all of our data, responsible for all these actions, moving money around, connecting smart devices, responsible essentially for anything we interact with on a digital world is powered by APIs. And think about that this critical component is not being secured. This is like imagining a wall that you have no walls, no doors, no locks, right? And you expect that just, that it will be okay. No, you need to make sure that you have alarms and you have locks. When you have jewels in the bank, you don't want that. Hey, anybody can open a door or window, and nobody checks, and they just get like a document from security that says, "Oh, make sure you do A, B, and C." Okay, but who is governing that it's actually happening? Especially in the world that Gen AI creates code, and you don't have a lot of control of what's the code that's being generated.
As a co-founder, right? You've learned to really drive entrepreneurship, but you're also a security practitioner, so you kind of have this really cool dual role. Tell our audience and tell the folks that are listening some advice around being that entrepreneur in the security space, why it's still fun to be able to hands on keyboard, give some of that thought back.
Um, Look, I think this is where you actually create things, and not just it's not in we are not in the idea spectrum. We're actually transforming ideas and pain points that I know from being a practitioner and understanding all the layers, like means all the way to the hands-on, the security practitioner, the AppSec engineer, the product security folks that have these issues, these challenges, these pain points. So understanding their pain points and combining that with the ability to actually, okay, let's build a product that I can actually solve all these pain points, I think allows you to close this loop much faster and not have a disconnect or a gap between the two. I think if you don't have one of the sides, right, if you don't understand the security practitioner part, it's very hard to create a product that will address their pain points, right? When you know your buyer and what they need and what their pain point, you can create much better product. And there is a lot of nuances to it. The other side is, if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're just a practitioner, but you have a lot of great insights and ideas, but you cannot bring them to fruition. So to me, that's the exciting part, that you can actually make an impact. That's why I like to spend most of my time with our customers and prospects, because in the end of the day, we created Salt to solve a problem, to bring value. So I always we create something, I want to hear feedback, right? Is this solving your problem? What other problems you have, right? And through that, the exciting part, I also get a glimpse to what's the future problems are, right? And I can talk more about it on AI agents and how that's gonna be transformative for organizations and their attack vectors that are creating as a result of that.
Roy, let's jump right in because you mentioned in the previous answer. Talk to us about generative AI, what it's doing to impact API, what AI agents are doing to both hurt and
Mhm.
and support security.
Yeah. So this is um, a shockwave to the technology world that literally changing everything. So we started Salt based on the premise of moving from monolith application to distributed applications with Kubernetes that changed the world. To me, that's even a bigger shift in the world. So what it does, let's break it down. First of all, it if APIs or developing a new API took you days or weeks or sometimes months in an enterprise world, now it becomes minutes. You can literally go to ChatGPT and says, or Claude or any of those, it says, code me an API that does X, Y, and Z with these technologies. And it literally creates it. And it works. I checked and I challenge it and it works very well. And every month they are improving it. So what does that mean for an enterprise? If they had hundreds of thousands of APIs, now they will have tens of thousands because it's so easy to create them. So that's problem number one. When you have too many, when something is going very fast, it's very hard to discover or manage even an inventory of it. The second part is the frequent changes to these APIs. So it's not just creating a new ones, it's also frequently changing the existing ones. So it's always dynamically changing. So that's posing huge risk for security because they did a lot of manual processes around governing APIs, and it's impossible, because to me, I visualize it like you are on a pipeline in a manufacturing, like in a manufacturing role, and you are like five folks, and you have things coming up your way through the pipeline. You try to do something, and suddenly you have this huge wave of you barely kept up, and then you have a huge wave, and it's impossible. Like it's overwhelming. So to me, it's like doing 10x for everything. I think the third challenge is you don't generate the code anymore. Developers do not generate the code anymore. So whatever I told developers to do, now they need to make sure the AI is doing it. And it's very challenging because it's creating a lot of code and it's very hard to make sure you build security into these APIs if you are not responsible or you're not the one that's coding it. Just glancing over the code, but you know how it is. People are generally tend to be efficient and try to innovate. So if it works, don't need to review everything. It works. So I think that's the third challenge. The fourth one you mentioned, that's a big one. That's AI agents. What is an AI agent? Essentially, right? AI agent, in the end of the day, it's just a piece of code that is pretty intelligent, that is connected through APIs to a lot of systems in your company. So think about an AI agent that its purpose is to look for an answer across multiple knowledge bases, right? Through your Salesforce, through your knowledge base, through internal wiki, whatever it is, your Slack, whatever it is. Essentially, what an AI agent do, it's connecting through an API to all these systems and query these systems for information and try to assemble an answer based on whatever you asked. But it means you have a piece of code that has very excessive permission to all your APIs, internal APIs that can pull a lot of sensitive data, and you don't really know how it works. It doesn't have defined rules, right? So it's creating a huge issue to what are they pulling, what data is being returned, what data they have access to. So you basically gave a master key to a person in the company. It says anybody can ask me anything. I'm connected on the back end to all my API. Like, tell me, what do you need? And you really need to, and you don't really understand the logic. So you need to put guardrails in place to really understand how it works and to make sure it govern it, to make sure that they don't deviate and do something that puts you in risk.
Roy, you recently were honored with a Forbes 30 under 30. Talk to us about that experience.
Oh, wow. It's interesting. The funny story is that I got a notification, like I got a call same year from Forbes Israel to let me know I'm the 30 under 30, and I was excited. 6 months after, I got a call from the US Forbes 30 under 30. So they think it's the same ones, so it's different events, like different Forbes. And so first of all, super proud, obviously. We got me by surprise. So I was really proud to, I don't like to talk about myself, but very happy that we've been recognized for what we built in the market. And essentially when we started, I think that was the key there, because a lot of people starting companies, but I think the unique part there was, you started a category. Like when you started, there was no API security category. There was no box for it. It was not defined anywhere. And we really created it. I've created the OWASP API Top 10, the first version of it. We educated the market. What does that mean, API security? What are the most common attacks? We formed a research arm called Salt Labs that helps to advance API security in the world. And that's probably the part I'm proud of the most, because beyond even salt is you establish a category that will serve here for dozens of years. That is really key to the security industry.
What unique security risks arise from organizations because of a lack of API security?
So number one is data breaches. Uh, there was a study in the industry that took 70 data breaches from the last 2 years and showed that a third of them actually stemmed from API vulnerabilities. To just give you an example, that's like every third company has an API component. Now, some people will be like, what? Like, that sounds very high. Problem is that in the headline, when you say, Dell got breached and that company got breached, they don't say API in the headline. But when you go deeper to the details, you see there was an API vulnerability that allows a huge data exfiltration. The problem with APIs, and Gartner, by the way, released a great report, and they showed that there is a study that shows that the cost of a data breach of an API is 10x bigger than any other breach from any other security domain. And the reason for that is that APIs are typically all or nothing. When you hack an endpoint, you can compromise the data on that endpoint. API works in a kind of, if you hack the business logic of the API, which is the common vulnerabilities for APIs, if I can get let's say if you're a bank and I can get your account details, it means that I can access any of the customers' bank, any of the customers of the bank, their account details. It's not just a subset of the data. So it's kind of all or nothing. If you found a vulnerability, it's a jackpot. And APIs are just extremely, extremely vulnerable. People are always asking me, like, how vulnerable APIs really is. This is like a niche case and I'm telling them that, we do a lot of evaluations, with customers, and obviously we have a lot of customers. My stat is that within 3 days, we see a critical, when I say critical, it's probably one of the worst scenarios for a company. We find it in 3 days in at least a third to a half of the companies, just to give you a sense. So basically every second or every third company, we see within days something that will fix right away because it's so urgent. So it's very, very common. You can hack Fortune 500 APIs just by studying API security for probably 2-3 months. And you're ready to start hacking like the most sophisticated organization because of this attack vector is so easy to hack. So data breach is number one, but it's not just data breach. You can move money around. If you're an airline, potentially it's to cancel modified flights. If it's gaming, you can earn points, translate them to money. So it can lead to money loss. And essentially anything you can do digitally through whatever credentials you have, think about, I can do it for you. So if you have a flight, maybe cancel it. If you have, we released the big vulnerability we researched and found in Booking that I can cancel any reservation. So it's translated directly to revenue loss for the company. Of course, on top of their data breach, on top of their reputation, it's just unlimited power. If I can do anything on behalf of any user, it's pretty critical. We are on Zoom. If I can access someone else's meetings, if I can get recordings, like think about like the spectrum of scenarios is just enormous.
Roy, what are some best practices that companies can implement to mitigate API security risks?
So first of all, let's start with the basics. You need to discover and you need to govern. That's the very first step. You can't protect what you don't have, what you don't know. And in most incidents I see is not being caused necessarily, but the most sophisticated attack. Because attack is always looking for the easiest way to get in. And many times it's just an API out there that's exposing sensitive data that require no authentication. So for me, it's start to educate yourself on the common API threats. You have the OWASP API Top 10, which is a good start. We also in Salt, we have a technical blog by Salt Lab that going through a lot of vulnerabilities of APIs. So I would say start by educating yourself. Secondarily, you need to establish a way to discover your APIs, to inventory them in real time when there are changes. Third is establish a security guidelines or standards that should be enforced against these APIs. So developers are not developing however they want. And if somebody wants, we have like templates that we built after seeing many, many organizations and combining with our own knowledge So I think that's like a good way to start. Once you have these components, okay, now I know, to assess what I have. Is it really comply with these standards, not comply with these standards? I think that's like the basic. Know what you have, know what you want to get to, what's the desired outcome, and see where's the gap. That's the starting point. Afterwards, you go to more advanced methods of doing the prevention, detections. I can go on and on, but it's like my short answer.
Roy, thank you so much for being on the Cyber Pro podcast. This was super insightful.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the Cyber Pro podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on new podcasts and all of our cool bonus content.